hold no documents.
Or taking part in the procession is committing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join with the Prime Minister?
8:05 p.m. Protesters from London to Leeds demanded the immediate deportation.
1 minute ago, Britain changed again, not with a law, not with a speech, but with another blade pulled from a jacket in broad daylight. Sirens echoed, shops slammed shut, and entire streets froze as machete gangs roamed freely. The question is no longer if UK streets have become a war zone. The question is how much worse it can still get. Britain is waking up to a reality it can no longer deny. Across major cities, machete gangs are moving openly through neighbourhoods, intimidating residents, clashing with rivals, and daring police to stop them. Witnesses describe groups of masked youths carrying long blades in their hands. Not hidden, not rushed, walking calmly as if the streets belong to them. In the last hour alone, multiple emergency calls reported armed groups roaming residential areas while families lock themselves inside their homes. Police sources confirm that patrols are overstretched, response times are growing longer. In some cases, officers are instructed to observe rather than intervene, waiting for backup that may never arrive in time. The reason is simple and terrifying. Frontline police are outnumbered, outgunned, and legally constrained. One wrong move, one viral clip taken out of context, and an officer's career is over. Criminals know this, they exploit it. Public confidence is collapsing at record speed. Parents are pulling children out of evening activities. Shop owners are closing before sunset. Bus drivers are refusing routes through certain postcodes. Entire areas are becoming no-go zones. Not because the government declared them so, but because ordinary people no longer feel safe stepping outside. Britain is not under attack from a foreign army, it is being hollowed out from within. Officials continue to insist the situation is under control. Statistics are released showing slight drops in selected crime categories, but they ignore what people see with their own eyes. Viral videos show machetes flashing under streetlights. Burned cars block roads. Police vans retreat under fire from fireworks and bottles. These are not isolated incidents. This is a pattern forming in real time. The anger on the streets is boiling. Protesters are no longer asking for action. They are demanding survival. They believe the system has chosen ideology over safety and procedure over protection. When citizens feel abandoned, fear turns into fury. And fury, once unleashed, does not listen to press statements or promises. Britain has reached a dangerous moment, a moment where the state's authority is questioned, where the law feels optional to criminals and unreachable to victims. Machete gangs roaming freely is not just a crime problem, it is a signal that deterrence is gone, consequences are weak and control is slipping fast. The streets are changing, and tonight many are asking a question they never imagined asking before. If the government won't protect us, who will? As night falls, the situation escalates. What began as scattered reports has now hardened into a grim routine. Machete gangs are not hiding in alleyways. They are patrolling main roads, parks, and transport hubs. Residents describe the same pattern again and again. A call to the police, a long wait, and silence. By the time officers arrive, if they arrive at all, the gangs are gone, leaving fear behind like smoke after a fire. The core problem is not mystery, it is paralysis. Police officers on the ground admit privately that enforcement has become a legal minefield. Use too much force and you face investigation. Use too little and you lose control of the street. Criminals understand this imbalance perfectly. They know the law restrains the officer, not the attacker. A machete becomes a symbol of power because it carries almost no immediate consequence. Government messaging remains detached from reality. Ministers speak of long-term solutions, community outreach and prevention strategies, while communities are dealing with immediate terror. Mothers are afraid to let their sons walk home. Elderly residents avoid opening their doors after dark. The idea that this can be solved with workshops and statements feels insulting to those living inside the chaos. What is fueling the rage is the growing belief that the system protects the wrong people. Repeat offenders are arrested, released, and seen again within weeks. Victims watch their attackers return to the same streets, smiling, untouched, emboldened. The message is clear. The risk of carrying a blade is low, but the reward, control, fear, dominance is high. That equation is deadly. At the same time, prisons are full. Judges are under pressure. Early release schemes quietly empty cells, while officials insist there is no alternative. The public hears one phrase repeated again and again: capacity issues. But to families living under threat, it sounds like an excuse. They don't care about spreadsheets, they care about getting home alive. Social media has become the unofficial news channel. Clips of armed youths circulate faster than official updates. Each video does more damage than 1,000 speeches. It proves what people already feel, that the streets are slipping away, that the rule of law is no longer guaranteed, but conditional on postcode, time of day and luck. This is how fear spreads, not through rumours, but through evidence. When people see gangs roaming freely and police retreating, trust evaporates. And once trust is gone, order soon follows. Communities begin to withdraw. Some talk about self-defence, others talk about leaving entirely. None of these are signs of a healthy nation. Britain is standing on a fault line. The gap between official narrative and lived reality is widening fast. Machete gangs roaming unchecked is not just a crime wave, it is a warning. A warning that the balance between authority and anarchy is tipping, and that once it tips too far, pulling it back may come at a terrible cost. The political fallout is accelerating just as fast as the violence. Public patience is exhausted. Every new incident sharpens the same question: why are the streets lawless while the state feels powerless? The answer many people are reaching is deeply unsettling. They believe the government has chosen containment over control and optics over outcomes. The priority is no longer stopping crime, but managing the reaction to it. Leaders insist that tougher laws already exist. They point to knife bans, sentencing guidelines, and police powers on paper, but paper laws do not stop machetes in motion. Criminal networks adapt faster than legislation. When one weapon is banned, another replaces it. When one route is closed, another opens. The state moves slowly. Gangs move instantly. Meanwhile, early release policies are colliding with rising violence. Offenders convicted of serious crimes are returning to the same streets that bred them, with unfinished sentences and nothing to lose. Communities notice patterns, familiar faces, familiar threats, familiar fear. Each release sends a signal that punishment is negotiable, that justice has an expiration date. The most dangerous shift is psychological. Criminals are no longer afraid of arrest. They expect it, they plan for it. Some even film encounters, knowing public scrutiny often works in their favour. The law, once a deterrent, has become background noise. Authority without enforcement is just suggestion. At the same time, ordinary citizens are told to remain calm, to trust the process, to wait. But waiting is a luxury when gangs roam your street with blades in hand. People feel trapped between two dangers. Criminals outside and consequences inside the law if they try to defend themselves. That pressure cooker is building heat. Across the country, whispers are turning into conversations about self-protection, about neighbourhood patrols, about leaving cities altogether. These are not radical ideas born of ideology. They are survival instincts. When the state withdraws, people adapt. History shows this always ends the same way: fragmentation, mistrust, and escalation. What makes this moment especially volatile is denial. Officials downplay, deflect, and redefine. Violence becomes isolated incidents. Gangs become youth groups. Terror becomes perception. But perception is reality when fear controls daily life. You don't need statistics when your street goes silent after dark. Britain is now facing a choice it avoided for years. Reassert control with real consequences, or continue managing decline until the streets decide for themselves. Machete gangs roaming freely is not the end of the story, it is the midpoint. What comes next depends on whether authority returns or disappears completely. This is the moment nations remember or forget who they are. When the streets no longer belong to the law-abiding, something fundamental breaks. Britain is now dangerously close to that line. The sound people fear most is no longer sirens, it is silence. Silence after calling for help. Silence from leadership. Silence when answers are needed most. The government insists this is manageable, that calm will return, that trust can be rebuilt, but trust does not come from statements, it comes from safety. And safety comes from consequence. Right now, criminals see hesitation where there should be authority. They see restraint where there should be resolve. And they act accordingly. Every unchecked gang strengthens the next one. Every delayed response teaches another lesson, that the streets can be taken without resistance. This is how control is lost, not overnight, but step by step, postcode by postcode. Once fear becomes normal, it embeds itself into daily life. People stop reporting crimes. They stop expecting justice. They stop believing the system works for them. The danger ahead is not just more violence, it is normalisation. Children growing up seeing machetes as common. Communities accepting curfews they were never given. Businesses budgeting for security instead of growth. When a society adapts to fear, it has already surrendered something priceless. Britain is not facing a crime wave alone. It is facing a crisis of authority, a test of whether the state exists to protect its citizens or merely regulate them. If the message remains unclear, others will fill the vacuum: gangs, vigilantes, and chaos itself. This is why tonight matters, not because of one incident, one gang, or one city, but because the patterns is undeniable. Machete gangs roaming freely is not a headline, it is a warning flare. Ignore it and the darkness spreads. Confront it and control can still be reclaimed. The streets are watching, the public is watching, and history will remember whether Britain chose to restore order or explain its absence. What happens next will define a generation. Britain is standing at the edge of a decision it has delayed for too long. Either the state reasserts its authority or the streets will continue to write their own rules. There is no neutral path left. Every hour of inaction sends a louder message than any speech that fear is tolerated and violence is negotiable. Communities are already changing their behaviour. People walk faster, avoid eye contact, and memorise escape routes instead of shop windows. Parents give their children instructions no child should need: where to hide, when to run, what not to say. This is not resilience, this is adaptation to danger, and once a society adapts to danger, reversing it becomes far harder. The most alarming shift is moral confusion. Victims feel scrutinised while criminals feel protected. Defending yourself feels risky while carrying a blade feels routine. When the law punishes resistance more consistently than aggression, it inverts justice. That inversion erodes belief not just in policing, but in fairness itself. Britain's leaders still have time, but not much. Real deterrence requires visible consequences. It requires enforcement that criminals understand immediately, not months later in a courtroom. It requires backing the police instead of second-guessing them. And it requires admitting the problem honestly, without filters, without softened language. If that does not happen, the outcome is predictable: more gangs, younger offenders, sharper weapons, harder streets. Fear does not stay contained. It spreads, it hardens, and it eventually explodes. History has shown this pattern again and again. Tonight's headlines will fade. Tomorrow's will be worse. The real story is not the violence itself, but the silence that follows it. Silence from those in charge. Silence where leadership should be. And in that silence, a simple truth is becoming impossible to ignore. When the law retreats, something far more dangerous takes its place. Britain is not asking for perfection, it is asking for protection. Whether that call is answered or ignored will decide whether these streets remain streets or become permanent battlegrounds.